right, thanks guys for coming today. And just curious, with a show of hands, how many of you live here full-time?
Oops, can't say full-time.
Handful. How many part-time?
Very
Okay, and anyone visiting on vacation? All right, cool, got a little mix of everybody. So Tom and I, like Rose said, we're both wildlife officers, so we are biologists, we're law enforcement, we do a lot of public education and outreach, a lot of dealing with wildlife conflicts in our communities here in Summit County. And so we're going to start by talking about moose. How many of you have seen a moose? Pretty much everybody. Okay, no surprise there. We do have a very healthy moose population here. It's been slowly increasing over the past several years. And so we're seeing more and more moose every year. With that, we're also seeing some more conflict. We're going to talk a little bit about history and biology of moose. They are native to Colorado. We get that question a lot. We don't know what the historical numbers were. And we may have more moose now than we did 200 years ago. At some point, they did get hunted out of Colorado. But this is a parade back in 1896 in Denver, and there was a moose on the float. And they just had native species then. They weren't moving them around. So they were hunted out in 78 and 79. They started transplanting moose from Utah and Wyoming up to North Park, up by Walden, which has for a long time been the moose capital of Colorado. I think we're competitors for that now. But and then in the 80s, they brought some more moose over. So they established this population in North Park, and those moose are, the moose we have in Summit County are an expansion of those moose from North Park. They moved into Middle Park, around Kremling, Granby, Grand Lake area, and then down into Summit. We have them all the way down in Fairplay now. Some other locations in Colorado are Creed and then the Grand Mesa. There are different populations, and I haven't updated this slide, but about 5 years ago, they also reestablished a population on the flat tops, kind of between Rifle and Meeker. And so they do well in Colorado. We have great habitat for them. And the species of moose we have here is the Shiraz moose. They're a little smaller than Alaskan moose. That being said, they are not small by any means. They're the largest member of the deer family, so they're related to deer and elk. And so they're all ruminants, the four-chambered stomachs. We refer to the males as bulls, the females as cows, the young as calves. And they don't have great eyesight, but they have those huge noses. They can smell pretty well. They can hear really well. And if you look at the bulls, their antlers are those big flat antlers, and they actually use those for capturing sound as well as fighting during the mating season. They can hear each other. And if you've ever been close to moose, which Tom and I have handled several moose, unfortunately, but they're very vocal. The cows and calves are talking to each other constantly with little mews and grunts, and the bulls, same thing, and cows, they don't bugle, but they grunt a lot. And they can live quite a while in the wild, up to 20 years. The cows usually live longer than the bulls. They just have an easier lifestyle. The bulls, are fighting every fall. But they're relatively long-lived for such a large wild species. They can run pretty fast for short distances, up to 35 miles an hour. And if you've ever been charged by one, you can see how fast they go. It's pretty scary. And they are excellent swimmers. We've had moose, I have not seen one myself, but we've had moose swim across Green Mountain Reservoir, which is up north there, and that's a pretty darn big reservoir. So I've seen photographs and videos, people have seen them swimming across there. Another cool adaptation that moose have is they can go completely underwater. Oftentimes they'll stand in beaver ponds and put their heads down under the water to eat the vegetation off the bottom of the pond, and they seal up their ears and their nose to do that. So something you don't really see deer and elk doing, but it's pretty cool. So moose, an average adult moose is close to 1,000 pounds. They are huge. And about 6 feet tall at the shoulder, and they're really dark. The adults especially, they're almost black. The younger ones are a little lighter, a little more reddish, and they get darker as they get older. And then they have these white legs, whitish grayish legs. So if any of you see our elk around here, the elk are kind of opposite in color. They're a little more of that light chocolate brown body with the dark legs and the dark head and neck. So the moose are pretty unique. Another thing they have is this flap of skin under their chin. It's called a bell or a dewlap. And it varies in size. Some of the bulls have ones that are almost 18 inches long. Even little calves will have them. The size of it does not indicate age or anything else. They just vary a lot from animal to animal. But they are a scent gland. So again, they have that good sense of smell, and that bell is a scent gland. So it produces some kind of scent and pheromones. And so the bulls, only the bulls have antlers, and they're the palmated antlers. So if you think, like the palm of your hand, big and flat with all the little tines coming off. So it's different than the branched antlers that deer and elk have. A good distinguishing factor between elk and moose. And the moose, just like deer and elk, lose their antlers every winter. It's an adult bull, but the antlers fall off usually in December or January. In the wintertime, in the mountains, it's really taken all they've got to survive the winter. So the less weight they have to carry around, the less energy they burn. So it kind of makes sense that the moose and the deer and elk all lose their antlers in the wintertime. They don't have to carry those heavy things around. They don't need them for anything in the winter. But then springtime, so right now, they start growing new ones in about April. And they grow amazingly fast. So between April and August, they go from nothing to massive antlers on an adult bull moose. And they can grow up to an inch a day when they have really good nutrition. And while they're growing, they kind of look soft and fuzzy and squishy. And we call that velvet. It's growing bone, and it's protected by this fleshy skin with a velvet fur on the outside of it. And they are sensitive while they're growing. And if they get damaged, while they're growing, then they'll end up with goofy looking antlers in the fall. But so come the fall, August, September, those antlers harden, and they'll rub that velvet off on the trees. And sometimes you'll see them with the flaps of skin, kind of bloody stuff hanging off of them. And that blood is actually what stains the antlers and makes them dark. Otherwise, they'd just be bone white. So they harden in the fall, and the bulls use them for fighting, for breeding in the fall. So the cows and the calves don't have antlers. Cows never grow antlers. The calves, if they're a male calf, they do get little nubs. You can't even really see them because their hair is so long, but they do have them there. They're just little stubs that don't really develop until they're over a year old. And so in the fall, we call that the rut. That's a breeding season. And the bulls will fight for breeding rights. And the bulls are a lot more aggressive in the fall. So if you see a bull and we see them, if the cows are wandering around through town in the fall, the bulls will be looking for them. And the bulls are super aggressive this time of year. They have a high level of testosterone, and they will beat up just about anything. I've gotten local calls about bulls attacking porches, railings, little wishing wells. Tom and I have untangled moose from several things in the fall, like zip lines, soccer nets, swing sets, because they're getting into whatever they can. They have a lot of testosterone, and we were handling a cow moose in September about 3 years ago. And it was at night in the dark. We had to transplant her and her calves, and there were two bulls circling us the whole time. I think they were mad we were taking their girlfriend away. But one of the moose at one point came charging out from between two houses with an entire aspen tree in his antlers. Like, he attacked an aspen tree and ripped it out of the ground. That's what they do. So in the fall, if you see a bull moose, give it plenty of space. They are highly unpredictable, and they're huge, and they're pissed off. They're looking for a fight. So something to keep in mind in the fall. And then with the cows, they give birth usually the very end of May, very beginning of June. So it's the third week of June. So we've got moose calves on the ground. If you guys see a cow moose this time of year, be aware she probably has a calf bedded down somewhere. If you don't see it, it's probably around. And The cows are more aggressive this time of year. They're very, very protective of those calves. And we do see a lot of twins in Summit County, which is a sign of a growing population. When there's a lot of good available habitat and a low density of moose, we see a lot more twinning. And I know it doesn't seem like a low density of moose in Summit County when you see them almost every day, but considering the habitat we still have room for the moose to expand into that habitat. We're kind of at that social carrying capacity with the people that we're at that level where we don't really want more moose than we have now. But habitat-wise, the landscape can support more moose. So they keep having twins. We even had triplets a couple years ago, which is really rare. And the calves will stay with their mom for a whole year, and which is pretty unique. They don't travel in herds. They're different than deer and elk. And once the spring comes along and mama is pregnant, she's ready to have her next calf or calves. Her yearlings from last year, if they're female, she will let them stick around. So we get calls from people that say, I just had 3 moose walk through my yard. There's a big one, a medium one, and a little one. And I can't figure out how old they are. Well, that's probably mama, her yearling from last year, and her calf from this year. But if her yearling from last year is a male, she will not tolerate him when she has her new one. So you often see these young yearling males. They're kind of like teenage boys wandering around, don't really know what to do with themselves. So they're off on their own for the first time because mom kicked them out of the house. So, but the cows with the calves, since they have their calves with them all year long, they can be aggressive really any time of the year if anything gets between them and those calves. So the word moose is Algonquin for eater of twigs. They're woody. They like woody vegetation, willows, aspen trees. They'll even eat the fir trees and the pine trees. So they can really survive on a lot of stuff out here. And the moose don't migrate because their food sources are available to them all year long. And versus deer and elk, the deer are relying on sagebrush, and the sagebrush is buried here in the winter. They need to migrate to find that food source. So moose really do like areas, riparian areas, which follow streams and rivers, because those provide all the vegetation they like. And they can do well in deep snow. Their legs are really long, so again, they don't need to migrate. They can survive walking through the snow here. But if we groom the trails for them, they will use them. It burns a lot less energy for them to stay on the roads and trails that humans have packed down. So we see moose tracks all over the Nordic Center trails, fat bike trails, rec path trails, ski runs. Moose are showing up on all of those. Their tracks are quite large. This is my hand. So they're significantly bigger than elk tracks, and because they're so heavy, you often see their heel bulbs because they push down deeper into the snow or the dirt or the mud. Versus elk and deer are lighter. They have those heel bulbs too, but they don't weigh as much, so they don't push down as much, and you just don't see those. Moose scat. So I have my chocolate analogy. So deer, kind of like Raisinets. Elk are a little bigger, more like peanut M&M size, and then moose are like Whoppers. So they're pretty good size, and you will see these piles around in areas where moose are hanging out. And this year, we have seen moose everywhere. Ski runs, roads, trails, condos, in someone's basement, at the hardware store, at the rec center, at the library. They're showing up everywhere. So in the wintertime, we had really deep snow this year, which did concentrate them even in smaller areas and lower down and closer to people than a normal year. But even on a non-high snow year, we'll see moose in the neighborhoods in the wintertime and all year long. So just be prepared. They could be around any corner, literally. You have a list of moose deterrents if any of you guys are curious. Air horns work for some moose, not all, but those little boat air horns, really annoying noise. But if they're outside on your driveway and you can't get to your car, keep an air horn in the house and blow it a few times. Sometimes car alarms work too, but can get them to move off. If you want to keep them out of your yard, then we recommend electric fencing or the plant skid repellent. They sell it at Murdoch's. It's a blood meal base So deer, elk, and moose don't like it, and it'll stay on your plants through a few weather events. So you don't have to reapply it every time it rains. So those are good. There's some homemade recipes out there. You can find them online. Wolf urine also works. You can order that online as well. And I heard, recently people are ordering fox and coyote urine to help with the vole problems or goose problems on their property. So, and then some other kind of old things that work. Irish Spring soap bars. My parents used to use those to keep elk out of the garden, and they worked for elk. Mothballs. Most wild animals don't like the smell of those. Dryer sheets as well, little bounce sheets. So your neighbors might wonder what you're doing, but. So moose are really cool, but they are the most dangerous animal in the state of Colorado. Bar none. They're big and they're not afraid of us. Whereas most other wildlife, we can scare them away. They don't want to be around us. Moose just don't care. They do not fear us, and they will let us get too close to them. The other issue is that is dogs. And most of the moose attacks on humans that have happened in Colorado are associated with dogs. Whether they're on or off leash, lunging at a moose, barking at a moose, chasing a moose. And then what happens? Moose gets mad, goes after the dog. Where does the dog run? Right back to the owner. And the owner gets trampled. Dog gets off scot-free. And that's what happens. But wolves and grizzly bears are the two primary natural enemies of moose, the two wild animals that prey on moose. And so to a moose, their brains are only about this big. They see a dog, and to them it's a canine. It's a funny looking wolf. They don't like it. And what Tom and I have observed is a lot of our urban moose, I guess we could call them, the ones that hang out in towns and around neighborhoods, they get used to people and they get used to dogs as long as the dogs leave them alone. I've watched people with a dog on leash walk, pass down the sidewalk and there's a moose on the other side of the street, and if the dog doesn't bark or do anything to the moose doesn't really care. But it's that if that line gets crossed, it can really create a dangerous situation. So we've had this year one lady kicked and one guy flat out trampled by moose. The lady that got kicked, that was just a surprise encounter on a trail. They both came around a corner, surprised each other. It was a cow with a calf. The lady dove off the trail. The moose ran by and kicked out to the side, and the lady was okay. But the other situation, Tom, you want to tell him?
The other situation was up in Breck. A guy was walking his dog, wasn't paying attention whatsoever, walked basically face to face with the moose, and this little dog was just barking like crazy, and they had a stare off for a couple minutes, and then the dog did something and the moose just knocked him over and kind of danced around on him for a little bit, and he let the dog go and the moose chased the dog. It's the only reason he's alive. It's because that dog ran away. But it's all about the dogs.
Did he catch the dog?
Yeah, they finally caught the dog.
No, but the moose didn't hurt the dog.
Nope, moose didn't hurt the dog.
I mean, I care
Nope.
about the person.
So, but if that happens, if you let your dog chase a moose, you could be charged with harassment of wildlife. So it is illegal to let them go after a moose. So, the tips for watching moose are just keep your distance. That's the best thing to stay safe. Use binoculars. Use your zoom on your phone or your camera. Never try to push a moose off a trail. And people do. They get impatient. They'll throw snowballs at them. They'll chase them with snowmobiles, and all of that is considered harassment. Really, the moose is going to do what the moose is going to do. So you either wait it out, wait for it to move off the trail, go around it, or go back the way you came. Those are the options. And keeping your dog on a leash and keeping it, even if some of these attacks happen when the dogs are on leash, especially those retractable ones. So even if your dog's on leash, don't let it go after the moose. So there's some trails in Summit I won't even bring my dogs anymore because I am worried about a moose encounter. And my dogs are good, but not when there's a moose present. I don't know what they're gonna do. So. Which trails are those? I know. Most of them. Yeah. So feeding moose is illegal. Last year we had this local girl feeding a moose carrots out of her car. She did get a ticket for harassment of wildlife and illegal feeding. But some people also place out grain, corn, vegetables, and salt blocks. So this actually is an individual on Ski Hill Road who is advertising on his rental. And he has moose, bears, deer, foxes, you name it, in his backyard on the salt block, and he's using it to advertise. So he is he has multiple counts of illegal feeding. So, but salt blocks, a lot of people are not aware of it, but salt blocks are illegal. And the moose that we have had that have been stuck in like backyard zip lines, clotheslines, soccer nets, swing sets, that kind of thing, there was always a salt block in that backyard. So it is very hazardous to them. And the other thing is they carry chronic wasting disease. Moose can get chronic wasting disease, which I don't know how familiar you guys are. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but it is a neurological disease, a prion disease in this family with mad cow that is deer and elk and also moose in Colorado have it. And when they're licking the same salt block, that's an unnatural feeding habit. When animals are in the wild and they're feeding, they might be close to each other, but they're eating different branches or different plants. They do not have direct exchange of saliva and mucus and all that. But when you put out a bucket of grain or a salt block, they are having that direct exchange of fluids and can transmit diseases a lot more quickly through a population. So that's one of the main reasons it's illegal. And it habituates them to people. They will frequent backyards, and they're already in enough backyards. We don't need them, give them any other reason to show up in backyards. So
what about bird feeders?
So bird feeders, we'll talk about it. Tom will talk about it with bears. They're fine as long as only birds are using them. If the seed's falling on the ground and foxes and bears are getting it, you have to clean it up. If it's attracting other wildlife, it is illegal. So bird feeders need to be contained and put out for birds only. So if it's a bowl on your picnic table, and I've seen this multiple times, that the moose can come munch out of, or the fox can hop up and eat out of, that's illegal feeding of wildlife. So, and it's also harassment. They're two separate charges, but it's considered harassment because it changes the animal's natural behavior, and it puts them in danger because it's habituating them more to people, and it increases that chance that animal is going to have conflict with humans and be put down for it. So, and Tom and I have written a lot of those tickets, and our judge in Summit County is very supportive of wildlife feeding charges. We've had people take it to trial, and they just end up paying a lot more with a guilty plea. So, but moose, when they're aggressive, some signs to look for is they pin their ears back like a horse, like an angry horse. The hackles, the hair on their back will stand up, and that's some long hair. So you can tell when all those hackles stand up like this right here, and they'll lick their snout. Sometimes they'll sway their head a little bit, and if they start walking towards you, that is not good. They are about to charge. If they stop what they're doing and focus on you, you're probably too close. So back off, because they'll look at you, and then if they decide they don't want you there anymore because you're in their space, they'll turn toward you, they'll start walking, and they'll just get faster and faster until they've trampled you. So it happens, there are innocent encounters with moose where someone's on a trail, they come around a corner, and all of a sudden they are too close to a moose, totally unintentionally. That happens. So if you end up too close to a moose, make sure the moose is not cornered, make sure it has a place to go, make sure you have a place to go, and then go there. You can move slow, back away, keep your eye on the moose, but if they come towards you, run and get behind something really big. If it's in town, get behind a building, a car, get up on a porch, go inside a building. If it's out on a trail, look for a big rock, a tree, good diameter tree to get behind. And usually if you kind of go away, the moose will be like, whatever. Even if it charges, it'll stop and then go back to whatever it's doing. So get behind something big. So that is, do you have anything else to add with the moose? We've got a lot to cover in our hour here, so we're trying to crank through each one.
What range do the moose cover? I mean, do they stay pretty close in one area?
Yep, we've had some radio-collared cow moose to look at just that, and the cow moose tend to stay within Like a Breckenridge cow moose is going to stay in the Breckenridge kind of south I-70 area. Keystone cow, same thing. She's going to stay in that area, maybe go up into the forest and back down. And they will return to almost the same spot to have their calves again year after year. It's pretty fascinating. Like literally 2 GPS points on top of each other based on the radio collar. The males and young females, if they're a year or two old and haven't bred yet, they may take longer walkabouts until they kind of find a spot that they like. So the cows do that. The bulls will travel in greater areas because they're looking to breed, and then in the wintertime they'll group up together. But their ranges, we'll have the same bull here and in South Park, or here and way north of Silverthorne if they make it across I-70 without getting hit. But we do, just to add to that, we have average of 12 moose a year hit just in Summit County on our highways. So, and they are a hunted species. We have around 30 licenses for moose. I think we're at 32 licenses for this fall. 33? 30, okay. Well, there's about 400 licenses statewide, and last year we had 58,000 applicants for those 400 licenses. So yeah, you're lucky to ever draw a moose tag in Colorado. But it is our way of providing hunter opportunity. Moose meat, if you ever have a chance to taste it, is excellent. It's like a lot like elk meat, but even better. And it also is a way to kind of try and keep tabs on the population. So.
The Summit Daily News this morning has an article about wildlife bridges.
Yeah.
And there's 3 places in Summit County they are initially targeted.
And I'm on the committee that has come up with that. Yeah, yeah.
Is that a good idea?
It's an excellent idea. We will take all the support and financial and otherwise support for that. They are expensive projects. But Tom and I are the ones that are putting down the animals that are hit and still alive. We're picking up the animals that have been killed, trying to donate the meat out to people. And we had 3 moose just hit on I-70 in the month of May. And it's a lot. It's a lot for our small community. And deer and elk, we don't even keep track of the numbers, but we're probably around 20 or 30 of those each winter, just in Summit County. Bears, about half a dozen a year. Lions, 3 or 4 a year. Bobcats, 3 or 4 a year. And that's, that adds up.
That's not talking about the human safety side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hitting a moose is dangerous.
There aren't many vehicles that survive hitting a moose.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to talk about black bears. Do you guys know what color black bears come in? Everything. We just don't have brown bears. No grizzlies here. We only have black bears in Colorado. Like I said, they come in any colors except for, they do come in white, but not that white. Obviously, it's a big old polar bear. But they do come in any color. So when people say, oh, we saw a grizzly, it's brown. We only have black bears in Colorado. Black bears are very intelligent and very curious. Their memories stick with them forever. They're like elephants. Their sense of smell, if you guys have ever seen, we didn't bring our box today, but we have a bear skull. And if you look up in there, their nasal cavity is all just full of sensors. Ours, we have a pathetic nose. We can barely smell anything. Humans have nothing on these guys. These guys can smell a piece of bacon from a mile away. I'm close to that, but they don't have the greatest eyesight. That doesn't mean that they have bad eyesight. They can see what they need to, but they don't have hawk or an eagle's eyesight. These guys are ridiculously strong. My dad was a rehabber for a couple years, and he had a bear that was 3 months old that could outpower him. So, and my dad's a big guy like me, 200 pounds. They're crazy strong. They're great climbers and swimmers until they get real big. When they get real big, they don't climb very well. And they can run very fast, 35 miles an hour up and down hills. I've seen it. It's pretty impressive. They don't like to hang out with each other. The only reason they have a special way to mate, I'll talk about that. But they don't hang out, and there's not a breeding season. They kind of just find each other, do their thing, and then split. They don't like to be with each other very much. And these guys, they used to be not active during the day and night, but now that we have humans, they really like to be active day and night with, especially at night with things that people leave out on the front porch. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. These guys' average is 200 to 500 pounds. We do have a couple huge bears running around Summit County, probably 600-700 pounds. I'm really hoping some hunters run into them before they get into some trouble. But your adult sow, your average is about 175. Your males are, your average males here are sitting, 300-400 pounds. The yearlings, anywhere from 75 to 100 pounds. And cubs, they have a big range depending on the food years, 15 to 60 pounds. Habitat is spruce, fir, aspen forests. If it's out there, they like it. Bears live in anything. They're not a big fan of sagebrush per se, because there's not a lot of food there, but any other habitat, bears love it, especially riparian areas. They eat grass, berries, that kind of stuff. As you know, bears can eat anything. If it fits in their mouth, they will eat it. Nuts, berries, plants, insects. There's all kinds of bears that live up in the tundra, flipping rocks. You know why they do that? Looking for moths. They'll fill their belly up on moths. It seems like a dusty diet to me, but they actually eat very little meat. It's only 10% of their yearly diet. Certain times of year, it's 100% of their diet, like now. You guys know why now is 100%? What's on the ground right now?
Fresh grasses.
Calves, fawns. Bears switch their whole diet completely around on this time of year. We don't have bear problems right now because they're all up in the woods finding deer and elk babies. I know it's rough, but that's life. It's important for them. On spring and summer, they're looking at 4,000 calories per day. And in fall, they run into this hyperphagia, which they're after every single calorie they possibly can. If they can get 20,000 calories, that's a great day for them. Hibernation, it's 200 plus days a year. Climate change is changing that a little bit. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They go into the dens in late November or late October, early November, and their metabolic rates slow way down. They actually don't truly hibernate. They go into what's called torpor, which is just everything slows down to a crawl. But they'll lose 30%-ish above their body weight, and the cubs are born in the den. The mother doesn't really know that they're born. They just get born. Wouldn't that be nice for you mothers out there? Huh? My wife would love this. But they get born, and then the babies just crawl up and start nursing. They exit the den March, April, depending on conditions. The cubs are 10 to 15 pounds by the time they leave the den. And they'll stay with the mother for 1 year, one-ish year. Sometimes they'll stay longer if the mother doesn't get pregnant again. But then typically once they're about 2 years old, that mother boots them off, especially if the mother gets pregnant again, they're kick the babies loose. Cubs are just crazy cute. Everybody thinks that a bear standing on its back legs is about to attack. They're just looking at you. They want a better view. Now what you don't want to see is a bear popping its jaws. If a bear pops its jaws, you can hear that. Their jaws smashing together. That is a scary, scary sound. Don't be around. They'll do the same thing as moose. They'll flatten their ears. They'll raise their hackles. And what they really like to do is huff. They just kind of chuff with their mouth and blow. They'll blow boogers just everywhere. And then they'll take the ground and they'll kind of swat the ground, and that's just looking for a charge or a false charge, neither which you want to be a part of. They're scary. And the other one is when you know it's coming, is when they sit there and they just sway back and forth. It gets real scary. But hopefully none of you guys see this. You only see that if you corner a bear. Do you guys know what you do if you see a bear in the woods? Take a picture. That's awesome. I've only probably seen 20 or 30 bears in the woods, but every time it's awesome. And if you get the chance, if you have that much time to take your cell phone out and take a picture, you're really lucky. But enjoy it. Don't approach them. Don't try to take a selfie, but enjoy it. Passive bears, like this guy sitting here, he doesn't really care about you. He just wants to do his own business, but he's going to watch it because he wants to know what you're doing. Frightened bears, they run like crazy or they climb trees. Sometimes, the bear that wants to be left alone, they'll do this, or they'll just not pay attention to you at all, occasionally check on you, and just they won't pay attention. Or they'll just keep going on what they're doing. Those ears and that stance, he just doing his thing. He just wants to know what you're doing so he can keep on getting into people's cars and trash. You see the paw? Yeah, he's scraping the ground. That's not a good thing. You don't want to be anywhere near that. Here we go. What do you see if you see a bear? Or what do you do if you see a bear? Depending on your distance, first, take that picture. If you're close, you get your distance. Make sure you know what that bear's doing. Don't ever turn your back and run. You guys all have cats, or all of you? Yes. How many of you have cats? Well, what happens if you throw something? They have to chase it. It's hardwired. They can't tell. Regardless if they're hungry or not, they have to chase it. That's how predators are. Lions, bears, they just chase it because they have to. So don't run, don't turn your back, but keep an eye on them. If you have little ones with you, or if you want to, just be big. Be big and scary. Don't scream. High-pitched voices are like, have you ever heard an injured rabbit? They're horrible, but they squeal. So high-pitched voices may mean food. Black bears, that's rare with them, but don't even be close to being a prey. So deep voice, yell at them, throw stuff at them. If you do get attacked, what do? Fight. Nope, don't play dead. Nope, playing dead is not beneficial for, I don't know who came up with that one ever, but it's, grizzly bears will just eat you right there, and yeah. So we do have a lot of human and bear conflicts in Colorado. A lot of them are in our campgrounds. People leave food out and don't attend to what they need to properly. Like these little hard-sided campers, these are good to a point, but the best thing we can do is make sure that we're not leaving attractants for them. The other thing that we have in Summit County is people leave their trash out. Trash is a bad thing for bears. You guys know what bears think with? Their stomach. That's what guides their life. They're a lot like me. All they're looking for is the next meal. That's what's going to keep them going. So, if there's trash and it's left out, you will have bears. All they're looking for is calories. Calories mean survival. Every day is survival for them. So, during winter or during fall, all they're looking for is by far the most calories. We had 2 bears that stayed awake all winter. They actually gained weight over winter because of trash. There's no other thing that can keep a bear awake. The thing that puts bears to sleep is the lack of food. So if they're getting into Breckenridge restaurant trash cans, what do you think's in there? Epic calories. So these 2 bears, they ate so many hot tub covers. But all they were doing is just going trash can after trash can, and they gained 60 pounds over 3 months of winter, which is crazy. They should have been losing that. So yeah, trash is pretty bad. And what's the other thing with trash? They get habituated. They start losing their fear of people. Once they lose their fear of people, they don't care if people come close. And then if somebody gets close to them and gets them upset, how does a bear show its anger? Bite or swat. So then you have a bear attack. Then what do we have to do with that bear? We have to kill it, period. The statute requires us to remove any animal that hurts somebody. And when mothers get into trash, they teach their generations. And then their next generation and their next generation, that's all they learn is just trash, trash, trash. So it's a massively perpetuating cycle. It's
What about barbecues? Clean it off.
Yep.
And there's a little bit of a smell.
Yep. What we tell people is to burn it off. Leave your grill on for an extra, turn it on high and burn it off till all the smoke is off your grill, and that's typically not enough to bring them in. If all you have is some charcoal left, burned crumbs and stuff, that typically won't bring them in. So as opposed to if you have, barbecue sauce on there that's warmed up, and that's a cotton candy to bears. So, what can we do to prevent this? A lot of times we have, we're trying to get a couple things passed in the county where you only put your trash out in the morning and then take it in that night. You can't leave it out overnight. Got to make sure that it's in a covered place where bears can't get into. Does that mean put it behind 4 walls of 1/4-inch plywood? That's nothing for a bear. They can pull that stuff off, no questions asked. And you can see these trash cans. Bears don't have problems with eating through normal trash cans. What we do have is there's bear-resistant trash cans. Anybody tells you there's a bear-proof trash can? Doesn't exist. It's called a tank. But you can, if you don't have somewhere to put trash in at night, these bear-resistant trash cans are actually really good. There are bears that eat through them, like this. They can chew through the side if they're big enough and dedicated enough. But typically bears are all about eating calories and conserving calories. So if it takes them a long time to get into a trash can, they're going to give up. They're lazy. They're super lazy. They want that easy calorie. So we're trying to work with construction sites, trying to keep a big open trash cans. Try seeing what we can do with them. They're problematic, but dumpsters with locking lids, those big ones are problematic because there's no way to open up or close the tops. But bear-proof dumpsters that actually have lids, and the important part is using them properly. There's a ton of bear-proof trash cans, big dumpsters that people just open up the door, throw it in, and walk away. Just doesn't make sense, but it happens all the time. So proper usage of that stuff is huge. And plastic trash can lids like that, if you guys have those on any dumpsters and where you live and think those are bear proof, I got plenty of pictures to show you otherwise. But yeah, and they get squeezed through little time. That's a big bear, a little window. Again, another thing, the burning off the grills, keeping coolers inside. Don't feed your pets on the deck. Storing your pet food inside. A lot of people have chickens and ducks around the county. That's cool. Just understand that you may have a bear come eat everything in one night. Just life. But there's certain things that you can do to help mitigate that. Again, feeding pets on porches and decks. it amazes me how many people like to do the old school thing in the cartoons of bake a pie and put it by the back window. And then they're surprised when a bear breaks into their house and eats their pie. I would do that, but not just a bear. But it happens all the time. So if you do have if you cook a pie, just put it on your upstairs window so that you can open it up. Close your windows on the bottom floors where bears can get into. They are pretty impressive on the places they can get through. Dog doors, they can squeeze through pretty small dog doors. It's impressive. There are some acrobatic bears that, if this were me, I don't think I would put a rope up that can actually hold a 200-pound bear. But if he's that dedicated, he's going to get it. But this is just an example. I mean, these people are doing everything right to try to be bear aware. Obviously, this bear is better than that. But if there are bird feeders and you know that animals are coming in other than just birds, by law you have to put them up. Because if you know that something else is coming in, you are knowingly feeding wildlife. So if a bear or deer or elk or moose are coming into a bird feeder, you got to pull those. Foxes, yeah, foxes are. Coons, yeah. Well, the problem is they get knocked down, the birdseed falls on the ground, so they come into that. So even if they can't reach it, they're just eating the stuff off the ground. So if there's stuff coming in, and if there's animals coming in and eating that, take them in. And sometimes you only have to do that for a week or two, and then you can put them back out. But as soon as something's coming in, got to make sure they get put in. Yeah. It doesn't take much, but bears remember. Bears, this bear, I'm sure if it sees a person, all it sees is the ability to get food. When people are hiking in the woods and then take their backpack full of food and huck it at the bear and run away, what did that bear just learn? All I have to do is approach a hiker and then they're going to throw food at me. This is awesome. So it just takes one bad choice, and sometimes, if you're going to huck your backpack at a bear and run away, if that saved your life, then cool, but there are future repercussions from that. So.
Have you heard of a report of a bear in the townhome development at Tiger and 9 in Breck, north side of town?
Specifically, no, but I can't place a bear sighting there, but I'm sure there's bears there. There's no place in Summit County there's not bears. They're everywhere. Yeah, this is just another thing. It's illegal to feed them, but it's just dangerous. Because what do we have to do with a bear if it hurts somebody? Worst part of my job. We have all kinds of literature and things that we can send to HOAs and different companies. We have big stickers that say close, I can't remember what the exact words are. Basically close the dumpsters to save a bear. I can't remember the exact wording, but we have all kinds of literature. If you guys need it, we can send you PDFs. We don't print this stuff off anymore because it's too expensive, but we're happy to send that to you. If you guys want to scatter that out, we're happy to give that to you. Deterrence. This is another thing that works for moose too. Works great for bears. Take a pop can, throw some coins in it, and shake it. It's a terrible noise for anybody, but the wildlife does not like it. But for the bears, horns work great. Alarms. I have a duck coop in my backyard, and I've got a lot of this set up on it. I've never had a bear issue. I've got a motion sensor that sets off lights, and it sets off a really loud talk radio. And nobody likes talk radio, especially bears. But but I don't have issues with foxes, bears. It's been very effective. The ammonia and bleach, ammonia is good, but the problem is that it washes off. If we had a day like yesterday, it's gone. One rainstorm, it's all gone. But you can put ammonia in your trash cans. You can put ammonia around places. They don't like ammonia. I've never had a lot of luck with bleach. I'm not sure why, but a straight ammonia is good. There's a couple different. We have ammonia bombs. If you take a Ziploc bag, fill it with 10% ammonia and 90% water, and then you smear peanut butter or bacon grease around it and hang it from the side of your house, like here. So the bear has to go up on its paws and reach up and bite it, and then it gets a mouthful of ammonia and water. It doesn't hurt them. Really is not pleasant for them, but it's a great deterrent if you have a bear wandering around your house. Mothballs, they work for smaller critters. They don't seem to work great for bears. You can try them, but pepper spray is epic. If you have bear problems, if you get a chance to smack a bear with pepper spray, you'll stop the problem. They've proven that it stops bears mid-charge, grizzly bears in Alaska and Kodiaks, it's very effective, and it really changes a bear's thought process of where they want to be and where they don't. Rubber buckshot, that comes from us. If you live in a place where rubber buckshot is a possibility, just load it up in a 12 gauge and you shoot them in the butt with it. It's very effective, but you can't live in town, and you got to be in a specific situation for us to be able to give that out. And there's a few other ways of being able to keep them from your house. There's scat mats. There's unwelcome mats. There's a few other things. You guys, unwelcome mats are pieces of plywood with screws put down, and then you flip it over so the sharp side is up. If they're coming in and looking your windows, you put that under there, they step on that, and it's a whole bunch of unpleasantness for them. They don't tend to come back with that. But there's on our website, there's a bunch of other stuff that you guys can do if you have bear issues. Colorado, we have a 2-strike policy. They get trapped once, they get red ear tags, and they get moved if they have to be trapped. If they get trapped twice, if they have already red ear tags and we trap them, they get euthanized, period. We do that because we used to have a 3-strike. You try to get a bear in a trap for a 3rd time, they do. They get very trap smart, so it's almost impossible to get them in there. And we found out that, if one's going to get a strike, it's very likely that they're going to get another strike. And 2 guarantees 3 strikes. So we went to this policy that just makes things easier and less likely for them to be cause problems in the future or get into a bad situation. We have big traps like this, big steel traps that we trap them in so we can dart them and work with them. We do our best not to trap them if we don't need to. If it's something that's just people are leaving their trash out, we get requests all the time that, hey, I have a bear getting into my trash, come move it. I show up at that door and give the person a warning that they're feeding wildlife. And it all comes down to them. That's not the bear's issue, that's a person's issue. So we go and talk to them and we make sure that the problem is solved. Now, if a bear breaks into a house, that bear's getting trapped, period. If it breaks into a house with people, that bear's getting put down because that's a bad bear. And we do not want that one to be out and get into another house with people. This is an example of the red ear tags, though, that we put into them. Put them one in each ear and hope that we don't see them again.
Bears have poor eyesight.
Ish. Nice. Nice. These are what a few of our bear traps look like. They're big culvert traps, big 4-foot metal pipes that we have. Some of them have guillotine doors, some of them have swinging doors. They all work the same though, and we try to warn people not to put their fingers in them, because if you put your finger in that hole, you're likely not going to get it back. And then this is just one of the bears. This is how we release them. Typically you sit up on top and you pull it open and they go out, and we try to do hard releases, which means once they get out of the trap, we start yelling at them. We'll shoot them in the butt with rubber buckshot. We try to teach them that people are bad. If you go near people, it's going to mean pain. So it's a method we tried. Sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not. Depends on the bear. But anything we can do to try to help promote them not being seen ever again, that's what our goal is.
And one risk that we have of setting a trap is if we catch the wrong bear, we have to ear tag that bear and move it. Because if it's handled in our trap, we have to mark it. And the last trap we set, we caught the wrong bear, moved it, and it ended up outside of Colorado Springs killing chickens and was put down by the officers over there. So Tom and I really are hesitant to ever set a trap. We'll only do it if it is truly a human health and safety issue and we need to remove a bear. But it usually just ends up killing that bear that we trap.
What is the range of a bear? If it was, you trapped it up here in Summit County and it ended up in Colorado?
We moved it. We relocated there, but we've had them go over 400 miles in 2 weeks and go back to where they came from. So their range is incredible, and they can navigate. It's amazing.
They have little
So can
internal
moose.
compasses. It's incredible.
Yeah, we've had moose. We've moved to Winter Park that have come right back and given birth in the same spot again, up French Gulch.
Yep.
So they're amazing.
Yep. This is not what we want to see. This is the end. What happens when they get trapped twice. So we do our best to teach people so that this is not my day, because this is a terrible day for me. I hate doing this. But we don't have a choice. So when they get that second strike, that's it.
And the other issue with moving bears is Colorado has a very healthy bear population across the whole state, and we don't have places to take them. We don't want other people moving problem bears to Summit County, vice versa. They don't want our problem bears. So there's a lot of people in Colorado everywhere now. And so that is another issue. When a bear is in a trap, it's hard to find a place to take it where it's not going to be next to another town or another campground or something like that.
What are their predators? Is it,
A bear's predator?
yeah,
People.
They are predators.
They'll kill each other in fights, but
Yeah,
there's nothing
nothing
that
eats them.
they're pretty much top.
wow. And what is their lifespan?
In captivity, they've had them live up to 23 years.
I think the oldest wild bear that I know of in Colorado was 18,
Yeah.
which is pretty darn old.
Crazy old.
10 or
If-
12 is
If
probably
you get a
average.
10-year-old bear, if somebody harvests a 10-year-old bear, that's an old bear for the wild. They don't. It's a hard life. It's a really hard life. So they don't do that great. In captivity, they do great because they don't have to fight. They don't have to do anything. But yeah. So I don't like to ever say problem bears. It's problem people that cause issues with bears. So you look at Aspen. Aspen's beautiful bear habitat. How many bears does the town of Aspen, deal with? I think they captured or put their hands on like 100 bears last year. Beautiful habitat, but they're still in town. Why? Because trash is easier. It's kind of the unfortunate future that we see for bear.